The cold wind blew through the trees as Rafik walked down the dirt path toward his small wooden cabin. It was evening, and the sun had already dipped below the mountains. The sky turned deep orange, and strange bird-like creatures flew silently above the forest. He carried a metal box full of tools in one hand and a cloth bag of food supplies in the other. Life on planet Dara 7 was quiet and lonely, but Rafik didn't mind. He had come here 3 years ago to live in peace, far from the noise of cities and far from the wars of the past. The forest was wild, but beautiful. Tall blue trees, glowing. Mushrooms and strange glowing bugs lit up the night. His cabin sat at the edge of a hill, with a stream running just behind it. As he reached the door, Rafik stopped. Something was wrong. The door was slightly open. He was sure he had locked it before leaving for the town market. He had lived alone for years. No one ever visited. No one even lived nearby. Slowly, Rafik placed the toolbox on the ground and pulled out a small flashlight from his belt. He didn't own any weapons. He had no reason to. But now, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Worry. He pushed the door open. The cabin was dim, but nothing seemed broken or stolen. The chairs were in place. The table still had dust. His old radio was untouched. But then he heard a soft sound, like breathing, coming from the back room. Someone was there. He walked slowly, heart beating faster, as he reached the storage shed connected to the cabin. He turned the handle carefully and opened it. There, in the corner of the shed, crouched in the darkness, was a figure. It was not human. The figure was small, maybe just a bit shorter than him. Thin arms covered in a silver-gray cloth. Long hair that shimmered like silver under the flashlight. Two wide, glowing eyes stared at him with fear. The creature looked weak, tired, and scared. It didn't move. It just pressed itself against the wall, as if trying to disappear into the shadows. Rafik froze. An alien here? He had heard stories of strange visitors crashing on the planet, of pirate ships, of lost travelers. But he had never seen one with his own eyes. The alien was breathing hard. It looked like it had been crying. Its skin was pale, its lips dry, its clothes were torn, and there were small cuts on its arms. Rafik slowly bent down and placed the flashlight on the floor, pointing it away so the light wouldn't shine into the alien's eyes. Then, very gently, he raised both hands and said, "I won't hurt you." The alien didn't respond, but it didn't run either. He spoke again, softer, "You're safe here." Still no answer. He took a step back and left the room, closing the door but not locking it. He didn't know what else to do. He sat at the table and waited. After some time, he heard the door creak open. He turned and saw the alien step out, very slowly, looking around. Its eyes moved from wall to wall, to the window, then to Rafik. Rafik stood up and pointed to the chair opposite him. "Sit, please." The alien stayed where it was. Rafik walked to the kitchen and poured water into a cup. Then he placed the cup on the table and stepped back. The alien looked at the cup for a long time. Then, without a sound, it walked forward and picked it up. It drank the water so fast, like it hadn't had any for days. Rafik quickly brought bread and dried fruit. He placed them on a plate and pushed it forward. The alien looked at him again, this time, less afraid, and began to eat. For the next hour, neither of them spoke. Rafik didn't try to ask questions. He just watched. The alien finished the food, then slowly sat on the floor near the fire. It didn't seem ready to talk. It looked around the cabin, touching the wooden walls and the old books on the shelves. Suddenly, it winced and touched its arm. Rafik noticed dark marks there, burn marks, like someone had pressed metal against skin. He frowned. Who would hurt? Her. Yes. Now that he looked closely, the alien did look like a woman. Her eyes were large, her features soft, even though they were not human. She noticed his stare and backed away again, hugging her knees. "I'm sorry," Rafik said quickly. "It's okay. You're safe." He stood up and picked up a blanket from the bed. He gently placed it near her without getting too close. Then he stepped outside. He sat by the fire outside the cabin and looked up at the stars. What had he just walked into? An alien woman, hiding in his home, injured, terrified. Mute. Who was she running from? Why did she look so broken? And why did she fear him so much? He could have called the patrol ships. He could have reported her. But something in her eyes, that fear, it told him she had suffered enough. He sighed and leaned back, letting the fire warm his hands. The night was cold, but the stars were beautiful. Somewhere out there, a story had started, a story that had now reached him. He didn't know who she was or what would happen next, but one thing was clear. He was not alone anymore. Rafik woke early the next morning. The sky was still gray, and a soft fog covered the forest outside. Birds with glowing feathers flew across the trees, and the wind made the leaves dance. He stretched his arms, rubbed his eyes, and slowly stood up from the bench beside the cabin. He hadn't slept much all night. He had wondered if the alien woman inside would leave, or worse, call someone dangerous. But she hadn't. She had stayed inside the cabin, quiet, still afraid. Rafik pushed. The door opened gently. Inside, the room smelled of wood smoke and dried fruit. The small fire had burned low, and cold air had entered through the cracks in the windows. She was still there. The alien woman sat curled up in a corner, wrapped in the blanket he had left for her. Her eyes opened quickly as he stepped in, and she moved back a little, like a wild animal ready to run. Her body was thin, her skin pale, and her silver hair hung across her face like silk. "I brought food," Rafik said, lifting a small tray. He placed it on the table. Warm porridge, bread, and fresh water. Then he stepped back again, giving her space. She didn't move. Rafik waited. The silence in the cabin was deep, but not empty. It was full of tension, of questions not yet asked. He tried to speak slowly. "You hungry?" She stared at him, her head tilted slightly. No answer, not even a sound. But after a few moments, she stood up, still holding the blanket tightly around her. She stepped carefully, her eyes watching every move he made. Like she didn't trust him, like she feared a trap. She reached the table and picked up the cup of water first. She drank it in small sips this time. Then she tasted the porridge. It was simple food, but to her, it seemed like something precious. Rafik didn't smile or speak more. He just watched quietly, making sure not to get too close. He could see her hands were shaking, not from cold, but from fear. After she finished eating, she sat back on the floor near the fire. Her back touched the wall, as if she needed to feel something solid behind her. She looked at the door, then at the window, then at Rafik, still silent. Rafik sat down too, a few steps away. He opened a small wooden box and took out an old translator device. It was dusty and weak, but still worked. "I don't know your language," he said, turning it on, "but maybe this can help." He placed the device on the floor between them. The machine blinked once. Then again, it began scanning her face, listening to the few sounds she made. Minutes passed. Suddenly, a soft voice came from the device. "Name." "Nira." Rafik's eyes widened. He looked at her. "Nira, that's your name?" She looked confused at first, but then slowly nodded. "Double quotes, yes," she said. Her voice weak but clear through the translator. Rafik gave a short nod. "I'm Rafik." Nira looked at him closely now. Her body was still tense, but her eyes no longer held the same deep fear. The translator spoke again in her voice, slowly. "You've not hurt me." Rafik shook his head. "No, never." She looked down at her arm, where the burn marks were still healing. "Others, they did. Took me, locked me." Rafik listened carefully. Who did that?" "Hunters." She said. "Not from here. Ship black, loud. Took many. I escaped." Her voice broke slightly. Rafik frowned. "You escaped and hid here." She nodded. For a moment, silence returned. Rafik looked at the burn marks again. They weren't just wounds. They looked like symbols, letters maybe, or numbers. Someone had branded her. He stood up and went to a small drawer. He brought out a small bottle of healing gel and some soft cloth. "I can help," he said gently. "This will heal faster." Nira pulled her arm back at first. Her eyes were full of fear again. But Rafik didn't move closer. He just placed the items on the floor between them and stepped back. After a few minutes, she picked up the gel and touched it with her finger. She placed a bit on the burns, and her face relaxed slightly. "It does not burn," she said. "It's made for skin," Rafik answered. "It helps." Nira didn't speak again for a long time. She stared at the fire, her eyes reflecting the orange light. Her breathing slowed. Her hands stopped shaking. For the first time, she looked calm. Outside, the fog began to clear. Light entered through the windows, and the trees glowed softly under the rising sun. Rafik stood up. "I need to fix the generator outside. If I don't, the heat will stop. You can rest here. You're safe." Nira didn't reply, but she didn't stop him either. He stepped out and worked on the small generator near the stream. The wires had rusted a bit, and the power had dropped. He cleaned the parts and replaced a broken coil. As he worked, his mind stayed on Nira. He had seen fear before. He had seen war. But Nira's eyes held something different, like she had lost everything and didn't expect kindness anymore. When he returned to the cabin, she was still near the fire, asleep with the blanket pulled around her shoulders. Her breathing was steady and her face was soft. No fear, just silence. Rafik sat on the chair and watched her for a while. He didn't know where she came from. He didn't know who the hunters were. But he knew one thing now: she had trusted him just a little, and that was the beginning of something bigger. The days passed quietly in the forest cabin. Each morning, Rafik woke early to check the water pump, gather food, and fix broken parts around the cabin. Each night, he lit a fire and shared a small meal with Nira, the alien woman who had come into his life like a whisper in the dark. Nira had changed. She still didn't smile, but she no longer pulled away when Rafik entered the room. She still said very little, but her voice no longer shook. She helped clean the plates, folded the blankets, and sometimes even watched the fire with a calm expression. Still, a wall remained between them, a wall of language, of pain, of fear. From the past, Rafik sat at his workbench one afternoon, carefully repairing the old translator device. The wires were damaged, and the signal was weak. If they could talk more clearly, maybe she would tell him her full story. Maybe she would understand that he truly meant no harm. He looked at her across the room. Nira was sitting near the window, watching the forest. Her silver hair caught the sunlight like threads of glass. Her eyes moved slowly, following a glowing bird that flew past. Rafik spoke softly. "I'm trying to fix the translator. It's not strong, but it can help." She turned her head, and for the first time, she nodded without fear. He smiled a little and continued his work. After an hour, he powered it on. The device blinked. Green, a good sign. He walked over and placed it on the table between them. "Can you say something?" he asked. Nira stared at the device, then at him. She touched her chest gently. "I am Nira." The machine translated. Rafik nodded. "I'm Rafik," she repeated. "Rafik." Her voice was quiet but clear now. He sat down across from her, keeping his hands on the table so she could see he meant no harm. "Where are you from?" he asked. She paused. Her fingers tapped the table lightly. Then she spoke slowly. "From Sky, ship called Sinel. We were many, running." "Running from what?" he asked. Her eyes dropped. "From dark ones, with fire, with chains." The translator repeated her words with a soft echo. Rafik felt a chill in his chest. "They captured you?" She nodded. "They came with lights and sound, took us, locked us, used needles, questions, marks." She looked down at her arm, where the burns still showed faint lines. Rafik clenched his fist without thinking. Whoever had done this wasn't just a hunter, they were cruel. "I escaped," she said. "One night, when fire broke out in ship, I ran, found this place." Rafik took a deep breath. "You thought I was like them?" She nodded again. "I thought all humans hurt." He looked surprised. "You know humans?" "Yes, we heard stories. Humans strong, take planets, build weapons, no mercy." Rafik's heart sank. So that was how some aliens saw his kind. He couldn't blame them. There had been wars, mistakes, pain. But not all humans were like that. I'm not like that, he said. I came here to live. In peace. No war. No fighting. Just quiet. Nira watched him. Why alone? Rafik sighed. Because I was tired. My people fought too much. I left. I wanted silence. She tilted her head. But silence is heavy. Rafik looked at her, surprised by the words, yes. He said softly, sometimes it is. The fire crackled gently between them. The translator rested silently on the table, as if it wanted to listen. Do you want to return to your people? He asked. She hesitated. If they still live. Her voice broke at the last word. Rafik wanted to say something kind, something strong, but no words came. Instead, he stood up and brought a small wooden box from a shelf. Inside was a star map, a basic one, old but still useful. He opened it on the table. This is our sky, he said. Do you see your home here? Nira leaned forward. Her fingers moved slowly across the stars. Then she pointed to a small mark near the edge of the chart. Here. She said, this is Myron, my world. Rafik made a note. It's far. Yes, she said. But signal can reach. If we build booster. You want to send a message? She looked at him, eyes steady. Yes, maybe. Someone hears. Rafik nodded. We can try. She gave him a look that was close to a smile, but not quite. That night, they sat outside near the fire. The stars above were bright and endless. Nira looked up at them with wonder and sadness. Rafik noticed she often watched the stars like someone remembering home. She spoke again. Why you? Help. Me, Rafik thought for a moment. Because you were afraid, and you didn't need more fear. She looked down, touched her arm gently, and whispered, I was ready to die. Rafik didn't respond. He simply added wood to the fire and let the flames rise. The wind carried sparks into the night sky like tiny shooting stars. After a while, Nira asked, do you believe people can change? He nodded. Yes, slowly. But yes. She looked at him again. Maybe I was wrong about humans. Maybe I was wrong about aliens, Rafik said with a small smile. They sat quietly after that. No more questions. No more fear. Just the sound of the forest, the crackle of the fire. And two souls, one human, one alien sharing the same space. Under the same sky. The wall between them was not gone. But it had cracks now. Cracks that let in light. The air felt strange that morning. Rafik stood outside his cabin, looking up at the sky. It was clear, with no clouds, but something wasn't right. The birds had gone silent. Even the wind through the trees seemed to pause. It was the kind of stillness that came before something big. Inside the cabin, Nira sat beside the window, working quietly on a small metal device. She had used parts from Rafik's old tools to begin building a signal booster. If it worked, she could send a message toward the stars, toward Myron, her home planet. But Rafik couldn't focus on that today. He had seen a flash in the sky just before sunrise. Not a star, not a meteor, something different. He stepped back inside. Nira, he said softly. She looked up. Yes, I saw something, a ship. In the sky, her face changed instantly. Fear returned to her eyes like a storm. Was it dark? Long wings? Rafik nodded slowly. Yes, big. No sound. Nira stood quickly and walked to the door. She looked up, her silver eyes scanning the horizon. They found me, she whispered. The hunters. Rafik's heart sank. Are you sure? Yes, she said. They track energy. If they saw the old translator active or your generator light, they come. Rafik's mind raced. They'll land nearby. Search for life. We need to hide. But Nira shook her head. They have machines. They smell air. Heat. They will find me. Rafik thought for a moment, then snapped his fingers. The bunker. Nira blinked. Bunker. Yes. Rafik said. I built one under the old storage room. It's hidden underground. Small. But safe. Covered in lead stops. Sensors. Blocks heat signals. Nira's eyes lit with hope for a second, then dimmed. You will hide with me. Rafik shook his head. No, if we both vanish, they'll search harder. I'll stay up here. Pretend nothing is wrong. I'll stall them if they land. She took a step forward. They're dangerous, I know, he said calmly. But I'm human. They might not attack me first. Maybe I can trick them. Nira looked at him with worry, her hand slightly shaking. You helped me, and now you risk yourself. He smiled gently. What kind of person would I be if I let them take you again? She didn't speak after that. Instead, she followed him down into the storage shed. Behind old boxes and crates, Rafik pulled open a hidden trapdoor. A narrow staircase led down into darkness. He lit a lantern and handed it to her. It's small, but you'll be safe. Nira paused at the top of the stairs, her eyes full of fear and trust. She whispered, "Thank you, Rafik." Then she stepped down into the shadows. Rafik closed the door and covered it again with heavy crates. The wind outside had returned, but now it carried a sound of low humming, like a quiet storm in the sky. Rafik stepped outside and saw it clearly now, a ship black, smooth, like glass. It floated silently above the trees, scanning with blue lights. A mark on the side glowed red, 3 claws inside a circle, a hunter sign, just like Nira had described. Rafik took a deep breath and waved his arms. The ship slowly descended. Dust and leaves flew into the air as it hovered just above the ground. A side door opened with a hiss, and a tall figure stepped out. Not a robot, not fully alien either. A being with armor and cold, green eyes. The figure walked forward. His voice came from a device on his chest. "You are human." "Yes," Rafik said. "Name's Rafik. I live here." The hunter looked around. His eyes scanned the trees, the ground, the cabin. "Alone?" Rafik nodded. "Just me. No one lives nearby." The figure paused. Then he pulled out a thin scanner and pointed it at the cabin. "No signs of alien life." Rafik shrugged. "Not unless you count the bugs." The scanner blinked once. "We detected a signal. Old tech, non-human language." Rafik kept his voice calm. "I fixed an old translator yesterday. Testing it, maybe that's what your system picked up." The hunter stared at him. "Why? Because I'm bored," Rafik replied. "Living alone does that to you." The hunter's eyes narrowed. "We searched inside." Rafik stepped aside. "Go ahead." 3 hunters entered the cabin. They scanned the walls, the floor, even the tools. They moved fast, without speaking. One of them paused near the storage room. Rafik's heart began to pound. He forced himself to stay still. The hunter opened the door, stepped inside, looked around, then walked out. He didn't find the trapdoor. The crates and tools had hidden it well. After 10 long minutes, they returned to their leader. No signs. Life normal, human alone. The leader turned to Rafik. "If you see something strange, anything you report." Rafik nodded. "Sure, happy to help." The hunter stared for another moment, then walked back to the ship. With a deep hum, the ship lifted into the sky and vanished into the clouds. Rafik stood still for several minutes after that. Only when the sound was completely gone did he finally move. He ran to the shed and opened the trapdoor. "Nira," he whispered. She looked up from below, her eyes wide with fear. "They're gone," he said. "You're safe." She climbed up slowly, blinking in the sunlight. Her legs shook, but she stood tall. "You lied to them," she said quietly. "Yes," Rafik replied. "I had to." She stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "They kill people who hide us." "I know." She touched his hand for the first time. "You risked everything." Rafik looked into her eyes. "I couldn't let them take you." Nira's lips trembled. "You are not like the others." He smiled. "Neither are you." They walked back into the cabin. The sun broke through the clouds above, lighting the forest once more. But Rafik knew one thing now. This was not over. The hunters had come close, and next time, they might return with more. If they were going to survive, they would need more than a bunker. They would need a plan. The next few days passed quietly, but the air around the cabin felt heavier. Rafik kept working like normal, chopping wood, checking wires, and cleaning the small generator. But every time he looked up at the sky, he wondered if the hunters would return. Inside the cabin, Nira worked on her signal booster. Her hands were fast, her mind sharp. She used old tools and scrap wires to build something small but powerful. She didn't talk much, but when she did, her voice was steady now. That evening, Rafik brought out 2 cups of hot tea. The fire crackled inside the cabin. He sat across from Nira and placed a map between them. "There's something I want to show you," he said. Nira looked up. "What is it?" "An old place." Rafik said, "It's not far, up in the mountain. Used to be a human colony before the wars. Now, it's just ruins." She tilted her head. "Why go there?" "Because," Rafik said, "you need to see what really happened to us. Maybe then you'll understand who we are." Nira was quiet for a moment. Then she gave a slow nod. "Okay." The next morning, they left early. The sky was clear, and the wind carried the scent of pine and dust. Rafik led the way through the trees. Carrying a small bag of supplies, Nira followed close behind, wearing a long cloak and a hood to hide her silver hair. They climbed for hours. The forest slowly changed. As they moved higher, trees grew thinner. Rocks became sharp and dry. Old paths, once used by vehicles, were now cracked and filled with weeds. Birds didn't fly here. Even the wind felt different. Finally, they reached the top. Before them stood the remains of an old human colony. Broken walls, rusted metal towers, half-buried solar panels, old flags torn and faded. A burned-out building sat in the middle. Its roof collapsed. A place once full of people. Now only silence. Nira walked slowly among the ruins. She touched the walls gently, her fingers brushing over old burn marks and bullet holes. "What happened here?" she asked. Rafik stood beside her. "We came to this planet to build a home, a group of scientists, farmers, engineers. My mother was one of them. I was a child when we lived here." Nira looked surprised. "You lived here?" "Yes," Rafik said. "It was peaceful at first, but then other alien groups came. Some wanted to trade, some wanted to take. One day, the hunters came." He walked to a blackened piece of wall. "They attacked without warning, said we were trespassers. They destroyed everything." Nira looked down. "I thought humans were the destroyers." Rafik shook his head. "Sometimes we were, but sometimes we were the ones who got destroyed." He picked up a broken child's toy from the dirt, a small metal cube that once played music. He pressed it gently, and a soft melody played for a second before stopping. "That was mine," he said quietly. Nira's eyes softened. "You lost everything too." "Yes," he said. "That's why I built the cabin far away, to start again." Alone, she walked to the edge of the colony and looked out at the valley below. "I was told humans take and hurt, but you gave me food. You gave me safety. I only gave what any person should," Rafik replied. "Kindness." She turned to him. "No one gave that to me before." They sat under the broken tower as the sun began to set. Orange light touched the metal, making it shine like gold. The wind carried the sound of the past of people who once laughed, worked, and lived here. Nira broke the silence. "I think I can finish the signal booster now. Will it reach your planet? If the wind stays clear, and the stars are right, yes, someone may hear me." Rafik looked at her. "What will you say?" "I'll tell them I'm alive," she said. "And that I found someone who didn't hurt me." They sat for a while, longer, watching the stars appear in the sky. Then they walked back to the cabin, their steps light and quiet. That night, Nira worked late. Wires spread across the table like vines. Sparks flew as she made the final connections. Rafik watched, silently, handing her tools when she needed them. Finally, she sat back and nodded. "It's ready." The device was small, no bigger than a book. A metal shell surrounded a glowing core, and a long antenna reached upward like a finger pointing to the sky. "Where do we place it?" Rafik asked. Nira pointed to the nearby cliff just past the stream. "Higher is better, less noise, more signal." They walked to the cliff and placed the booster on a flat rock. Nira touched the side of the device. It hummed gently. A soft blue light blinked. "It's working," she said. Then she closed her eyes and spoke softly in her own language. The translator picked up her voice. "This is Nira of Myron. I have escaped. I am safe. A human saved me. He is not like the others. He gave me warmth. I send this message to those who still live. We are not alone. She opened her eyes. Now we wait, she said. Rafik placed a hand on her shoulder. We did what we could. Later, as they sat by the fire, Nira looked at him and asked, if my people come, will they be welcome? Rafik smiled. If they're like you, yes, always. She nodded slowly. And if they don't come, then we build something here, he said. Together. Her eyes held a light now, not fear, but hope. I never thought I would trust a human, she said. And I never thought I'd care so much for an alien, Rafik replied. The fire crackled. The stars above shimmered like diamonds on dark cloth. In that moment, neither of them felt broken. They felt like the start of something new. The night after Nira's message had been sent was cold and silent. Rafik sat by the fire, staring into the flames, listening for any sound in the distance. Nira had already gone inside to rest, but he could not sleep. His eyes kept drifting toward the sky, waiting, hoping, and fearing that suddenly a low sound rolled across the forest, not thunder. A pulse. Rafik stood quickly and looked up. A dark shape moved across the stars, silent, slow, and watching. A hunter ship. They had returned. He ran inside and shook Nira gently. They're here, he whispered. Another ship. She sat up fast, her eyes wide with fear. Did they trace the signal? I don't know, Rafik said. But this ship, it's smaller. Not a scout, a fighter. Nira stood up and looked outside. They will land nearby, search again. If they find the booster, they'll know someone sent a message. Rafik paced back and forth. We can't run. They'll see us, she nodded. Then we must trick them, hide the booster. Confuse their scan. Rafik opened a crate and pulled out old parts wires, magnets, reflectors, and power cells. We don't have weapons, but maybe we can use something better. Nira watched him carefully. You have a plan? He gave a small smile. Not a full plan, more like an idea. Together, they moved fast. They took the booster from the cliff and hid it inside a hollow tree deep in the forest. Nira covered it with vines. Rafik used signal mirrors and metal plates to bounce heat signatures in other directions. The goal was simple: confuse the hunters. Make them think the message came from somewhere else. Then they planted traps, not the deadly kind. Rafik didn't believe in killing but clever tricks. Energy coils hidden in wet grass, magnetic spikes under loose rocks. A speaker with fake human voices placed in the valley. By the time the sun began to rise, the forest was full of shadows and false signals. At dawn, the hunter ship landed. Rafik and Nira watched from a hidden ridge. The ship was silent and black, shaped like a claw. A hatch opened and three tall figures stepped out, dark armor, long rifles, and eyes like cold fire. They began scanning the area. The traps worked. The hunters turned toward the valley first, following the fake voices. When they reached the speaker, it exploded in a flash of harmless light. One of the hunters jumped back. Another fired at the trees, but hit nothing. Next, the magnetic spikes pulled their scanners in the wrong direction. The hunters followed false heat signals deeper into the woods, far from the cabin. Rafik and Nira stayed low, moving quietly through the trees. But then one hunter turned back. He scanned the path to the cliff and walked slowly toward the tree. Where the booster was hidden, he's getting close, Nira whispered. Rafik looked at the power gauge in his hand. Booster's still working, but if they destroy it, the message will be lost. He stood up. I'll distract him. Nira pulled his arm. It's dangerous. Rafik shook his head. I'm human. Maybe they won't shoot right away. He took a deep breath and walked into the open. The hunter stopped and raised his weapon. Hello again. Rafik said calmly. I told your friends no aliens here. The hunter said nothing. His scanner blinked red. He looked toward the tree. Just out for a walk, Rafik continued. Nice weather today. The hunter raised his weapon again. Then light exploded behind him. One of Rafik's traps aflash. Mine went off. The hunter turned quickly, blinded for a moment. Nira jumped from the trees and grabbed Rafik's arm. Run! They ran fast through the woods as the other two hunters heard the blast and returned. The ship's lights lit up the sky, sweeping across the trees. "They'll find us," Nira said. "They'll find the booster." Rafik stopped near a large rock. "Not if we stop the ship." Nira blinked. "What?" He pointed at the cliff above the ship's landing zone. "There's an old energy coil up there. Big one. I used to use it to power the cabin during storms. And if we overload it and drop it from the cliff, it will blast the ship with the MP. Electromagnetic pulse," Nira whispered. "Shuts down machines." Rafik nodded. "It might not destroy it, but it will stop it long enough for your signal to escape." They climbed the cliff fast, heartbeats pounding. Rafik found the coil rusted but still working. He connected a battery and began to overcharge it. "Ready?" he asked. Nira looked down at the ship. The hunters were close to the tree. One of them raised his rifle. "Now," she shouted. Rafik kicked the coil. It rolled down the cliff, sparked bright blue, and exploded in a silent wave of electric light. The ship below shuddered. Lights flickered. The hunters dropped to their knees. Weapons shorting out. Then dash silence. No more scanning. No more voices. Just wind. "They're down," Rafik said, panting. For now, they climbed down carefully. "The booster still blinked. Alive." Nira touched it gently. "Signal is still going," she said. Rafik smiled. "Then we did it." But just as they turned to leave, a sound came from the ship, a backup system. One of the hunters stood up, slower than before, but still dangerous. His eyes found them. He raised a smaller weapon. Nira stepped forward. "Wait." Rafik pulled her back. She looked at him. "I'll stop him. You run." "No," he said firmly. "We stay together." Just then a loud hum filled the air. A light appeared in the sky. Another ship, but this one was silver and bright. It stopped above them. And a soft voice came through the air. "Nira of Myron. We received your signal. Stand by for retrieval." The hunter looked up and froze. A beam of light struck down from the new ship, wrapping around Nira and Rafik, lifting them gently from the ground. The hunter screamed and fired, but the weapon melted in his hand. Rafik and Nira floated upward, hand in hand, into the light. Inside the ship, soft blue walls and warm light greeted them. Nira's people stood waiting. She turned to Rafik. "You saved me again." He smiled. "Guess we're even now." But deep inside, they both knew this was only the beginning. The inside of the silver ship was calm and warm. Soft lights glowed along the walls, and gentle hums of energy machines filled the air. Rafik and Nira stood hand in hand as they were guided through smooth halls toward a large room, where many beings waited. Nira's people looked like her, tall, slender, with silver hair and glowing eyes. They wore simple clothes that shimmered with soft colors. Their faces showed relief and hope. One of them stepped forward. "Nira, you are safe." "Now," Nira nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thanks to Rafik." The leader of the group turned to Rafik with a kind smile. "You saved our sister from the hunters." "We are grateful." Rafik bowed his head slightly. "I only helped. She needed safety." The leader's eyes were serious. "The hunters are a threat to many. They take what they want without care. But your bravery shows a different path." Nira looked at Rafik. "I was afraid humans were all the same. But you showed me kindness and strength." Rafik smiled. "Kindness is the true strength." That day, Rafik learned more about Nira's people. They were called the Alari. They came from a distant star system. Once, their world was full of peace and knowledge. But the hunters' merciless raiders destroyed many of their colonies, capturing those they could and leaving others to die. Nira had escaped during a raid on a small outpost near the edge of their territory. Alone and lost, she drifted through space until her ship crashed on Dara 7. The Alari had been searching for her ever since. Rafik listened quietly. He realized that despite their differences, both humans and Alari had faced similar struggles: war, loss, and hope for peace. Days turned into weeks aboard the silver ship. Nira's wounds healed quickly with their advanced medicine. She and Rafik shared stories about their worlds, dreams, and fears. The Alari studied the message Nira had sent and planned to send rescue ships. For others lost to the hunters, Rafik offered to help. I can guide you on Dara 7, he said. I know the land, the hidden places. We can find survivors. The leader nodded. Your courage is welcome. One morning, the silver ship landed gently near Rafik's cabin. The forest was quiet, but alive. Nira and Rafik stepped outside together. This place changed my life, she said softly. Because of you, Rafik smiled, and you changed mine. They walked to the cabin and found it just as Rafik had left it, still strong, still standing. Together, they planned their next steps. With the Alari's help, Rafik and Nira began building a safe haven, a place where all who had suffered could find peace and hope. Weeks later, a small group of Alari survivors arrived. They looked tired but grateful. Some carried injuries. Others held stories of lost friends and family. Rafik helped carry supplies, build shelters, and organize the group. Nira spoke to them, her voice strong and warm. You are safe now, she told them. Together, we will rebuild. The survivors smiled for the first time in a long while. But the hunters were not finished. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, a warning came from the ship's sensors. Another hunter fleet was approaching. Rafik and Nira stood side by side, ready. We will not run, Nira said. No, Rafik agreed. We will fight with light, with hope. Together with the Alari and some brave humans, they prepared defenses, shields, traps, and signal jammers. The battle was fierce but short. The hunters underestimated the strength of those who fight for peace. When the last hunter ship fled into the darkness, the survivors cheered. After the battle, Rafik looked at Nira. We did it, he said quietly. Yes, she replied, because we believed. They stood beneath the stars, the same stars that once seemed so distant and cold. Now, they shone with promise. Rafik's cabin became more than a home. It was a symbol of courage, kindness, and the power of trust between worlds. He and Nira continued to build bridges between humans and Alari, between past pain and future hope. Together, they wrote a new story, one where fear gave way to friendship. Where walls became doors, and where even the smallest light could shine in the darkest night. The forest around the cabin was no longer silent. It sang with life. With hope. With the promise of a better tomorrow. And under that endless sky, Rafik and Nira stood partners, friends, and guardians of a new beginning. The end.